Hello students, I hope you are doing well today. Thank you for coming to watch your lesson, which is going to be on the topic of reported speech. So by the end of today's lesson, you will have the following skills. You will understand the differences between direct and indirect, or also called reported speech. You'll be able to make reported speech from direct speech, and the direct speech is going to start from several common present and past tenses and also modal verbs that you've learned. And so you'll understand this lesson objective after you watch the lesson video. And finally, you'll also be able to form the past perfect continuous tense for the purposes of reported speech. And you'll be able to use this tense in combination with conjunctions of time, result, reason, and contrast, which we already have learned. So this lesson does contain a bit of review on past tenses, conjunctions, and also some new concepts. But first, before we get into the new lesson, let's go over some of our questions from our last week's quiz. So let's start out. So first true and false question was, a synonym, word with similar or same meaning, of yet is already. And this is true, and most of you did answer true to this. However, it was a bit confusing. So just to clarify, yet and already can be synonyms. For example, I haven't done the laundry yet. I haven't done the laundry already. Okay, so there, yet and already have the similar meaning, which means has it been finished or been done in the past? It's already completed. However, these are different parts of speech. Yet is a conjunction, and already is actually an adverb. So do be aware of that. That in some cases, yet and already can be synonyms or have similar meaning, but not in all cases, because they are different words and they have different purposes. The second true and false question was also a little confusing. So the second one was, the present perfect continuous, that should be PPC, not PPS, can never be used for actions that did not already happen. So this is true because we can use the present perfect continuous tense for something that someone did not do, right? If we'd say, they have not been working in Cambodia, right? So that's something that did not already happen, right? They have not been working in Cambodia. They didn't work there yet. However, that's still using the present perfect continuous tense. But however, you can reword this true and false statement to say, the present perfect continuous tense can never be used for actions that did not already complete. And we know this would be false as well, because we can use the present perfect continuous tense for actions that already completed, right? So for example, he was all red in the face. He is all red in the face. He has been running, right? And so that means that it's possible, it's likely in this context of this sentence that the person already finished running. He already finished running, so it's an action that completed. However, we use that to show what action led to the current result in the present, which is that he's red. So those two cases, so it can never be used for actions that did not already complete. We know that to be false because the actions could have completed, right? And we also can use the present perfect continuous tense in the negative form, and that would be for something that did not already happen or has not been happening, right? And number 3, be expecting can be used with present perfect simple, but not the present perfect continuous. And we know this to be false because be expecting, right, always appears in the continuous form. So be expecting, if someone is expecting, you can't say that person has expected a baby. That's not the way that we use this phrase, which is to be expecting, okay? So she blank all day, and she still blanked the meal. So these are practicing tenses. And so here we see all the answers, and we know the answer to be has been cooking and hasn't finished, right? Because in the first example, we give a length of time, right? And we know we use the present perfect continuous with lengths of time. And has not finished, we use the present perfect simple for results, to show the results of certain actions, right? So the result is that she still has not finished the meal, even though she has been cooking all day. They blank this problem yet. So have solved, haven't solved, have been solving, or have not been solving. So here since solve tends to be a verb that it occurs over a short period of time, we would be able to eliminate have been solving and have not been solving, because that would be, this sentence does not give a period of time or say that the solving took a very long time. So we can get rid of have been solving and have not been solving, and so then we're down to have solved and haven't solved, right? And so here, since last week we did learn the form, the past perfect simple, and the negative form with yet, right? So we use yet at the end to say something has not happened, right, already. And so here we know we'd be able to eliminate have solved, and we would end up with haven't solved, right? They have not solved it yet, however, they might solve it soon, right? So haven't solved is the answer. Okay, and so for number 6, we have blank to the supermarket. I'm starving and I don't see any food here. So we have hasn't she gone, has she gone, and then the past present perfect continuous tenses. And so here, as this refers to one action and there's no length of time, we know that it probably wouldn't be has been going or hasn't she been going, right? The present perfect continuous would not be the best tense to use in this context. And so we're left with has she gone and hasn't she gone. And so since we try to remember the interrogative or the question form of the present perfect simple, and since we don't see a yet or anything that would suggest any sort of negative form in the sentence, we would be left with B, has she gone. So has she gone to the supermarket yet? She has gone to the supermarket yet. So remember that we invert or we switch the order of the words to form questions, okay? Number 7, Sochiet, what blank in the attic for such a long time? Have you done? Have you been doing? Are you doing? Right? So here we know the answer is going to be have you been doing, right? And so here we see, since this occurs over a long period of time, we know this is going to be the present perfect continuous. And since this is an action that started in the past that didn't start in the present, we would not say are you doing, because that's the present continuous. The present perfect continuous means it started in the past and it's continued to the present. He is happy because his new job is now blank Phnom Penh, so he can stay in Cambodia longer. So this is vocabulary. You know, this is going to be based in. Based in means to have your work or your living arrangements in a specific place, right? If we fall out of touch with someone, then it can be nice to blank things that we missed in each other's lives. And so here, this is another vocab word, catch up on. So we catch up on things that we missed. She broke up with her boyfriend because he continued to break his blank to her that he would not lie to her. So this is promises, right? Things that we say that we are certain we will do to someone. And we don't always do that. Okay, so let's go into our lesson this week, which is focused on reported speech. So I want you guys to be thinking about these questions. So do you ever tell people what other people said or asked? And how do you do so, right? I'm sure that you do, both in Khmer and also in English. And in what types of situations do we talk about other people's words? And when and why is it important, right? So I want you to think about kind of these questions and what forms we use to do this as we go into our lesson. So our lesson is on forming reported or indirect speech. And so in English and many languages, there's a specific way that we tell or report on what somebody, including ourselves, said in the past. And to do this correctly, we must pay attention to certain details, including pronouns, verbs, and verb tenses. So reported speech is indirect speech or style of language that we use when we tell somebody what someone else said, okay? So it can be used in both spoken and written English. And it is different from direct speech. And direct speech is when basically you say what someone said in the exact way that it was originally said. So if I said, oh, I really don't want to do my homework tonight, then if my friend was telling someone else what I said, they say, oh, Sam said, I really don't want to do my homework tonight. So they say exactly how I said it instead of changing the language to say it indirectly, right? So it might be helpful to look at some examples. So here we have some examples of direct speech and indirect. So direct is, she said, quote, don't sing so loudly. And indirectly, we would say, she told him to not sing so loudly, right? And so here we see that we're not saying the exact words that she said, we're saying it a little differently. I lost my red socks. He said that he had lost his red socks. They said, we are looking for the cat. They said that they were looking for the cat. Okay, so here you can see a bit of differences between direct and indirect speech. Direct is exactly how it was said when it was said. We take those people's words and we say exactly what they were. Indirect is when we kind of summarize a little bit, or we just change a bit so that we're not saying exactly what the other people said. Let's look at the differences. So what changes from direct to indirect speech? What is added to make direct speech indirect? And what is taken away or eliminated to make direct speech indirect? Okay, so let's go back to our examples and see. Okay, so we have direct and indirect. She said, don't sing so loudly. And we see in the indirect example, she told him to not sing so loudly. Okay, so what is taken away here? I want you to think about that. I lost my red socks. He said that he had lost his red socks. So what do we see that was taken away or eliminated when we change from direct to indirect? Well, we see that we take away the quotation marks, right? So here we have quotation marks and we take those away. And we do this because we don't, in the indirect, we're not saying exactly what the other people said. So we don't have to cite because those aren't the original words, right? We only cite or add quotation marks when we're saying what someone's exact words were. And we also remove some of the original words, right? So here it says, she said, don't sing so loudly. And here we take away some of the words. So we don't say said, right? And we also add in a few different words, but we'll talk about what is added afterwards. So what is added? I lost my red socks. He said that he had lost his red socks. Okay. They said, we are looking for the cat. They said that they were looking for the cat. Okay, so what do we see? What is added here when we change from direct to indirect? So we do add conjunction that to connect two dependent clauses. So here we see he said, that's one dependent clause. Technically it's an independent clause, but that's okay. And we use that to connect he said with whatever the message was of his words, right? So he had lost his red socks. We see that it connects he said and that. So it's a little bit like in Khmer, I'm gonna not pronounce this great, but when we say Kyom get ta, get is to think, and we say Kyom get ta, I think that he lost his red socks, right? So it's a bit of this one example to give you that maybe will help you understand the meaning of that in this situation. But note that we don't have to write that, say it or speak it, right? It's not necessary to say it, right? We can just say, he said he had lost his red socks. We don't need to say that. And here we also see we add a subject and a reporting verb. So here we say, he said. In the direct sample, we don't know who said it. It just says, I lost my red socks. So it's the person who's speaking, right? I lost. And then when we're doing indirect, we're saying what the person said. So then we say, who said it? Well, he said that he had lost his red socks, right? So it's someone different who's speaking here. In this example, we're talking about them, so it's not they who are speaking, but this is exactly what they said. They said, we are looking for the cat. And so pretend that I'm talking about what they said. I said, they said we are looking for the cat. That would be direct because I'm saying exactly how they said it. This is reported speech because I'm taking their message and I'm saying it a little differently. They said that they were looking for the cat. Okay, so a little different. And so what has changed when we change from direct to indirect speech? So here we have, I lost my red socks. And in indirect, we say, he said that he had lost his red socks. So here we see the pronouns I becomes he because the subject changes from I to he, right? We also see the tense of the verb changes from the past simple, so I lost, to the past perfect for the action. So he said that he had lost his red socks. Should be an S there. So what are the observations, summary, when we change from direct to reported speech. So we see we remove quotation marks, we add the reporting verb. So when we add the reporting verb, it has usually the form of subject plus the conjugated reporting verb plus the rest. So said, ask, tell, he said this, they asked this, they told me. They're common reporting verbs, and there are others that can be researched as well, and I'll show you some soon. We add a conjunction that between the subject and reporting verb and the idea that was said. And like I said, this was optional. We don't have to use that. We add or change a pronoun of the subject, right? So it depends who is speaking. We change the verb tense of the action verb. So not the reporter, but we change the verb tense of the action verb. So we'll see examples of this after. And usually, reported speech is about something said in the past, so the original verbs need to be moved backward one tense to the past, and we'll go over that. But sometimes reported speech can be in the present, and that's the first example that we're going to look at. So these are some reporting verbs, so say, state, and you can look at these after and use these in your English. So first, we've reported speech in the present, so let's look at an example. So say someone says, I like dogs. The reported speech example, if we stay in the present, would be, she tells me that she likes dogs, right? So here we see the reporting verb is say in the present. The pronoun, the subject changes from I to she, right? We add a reporting verb. So here we see the reporting verb is tell. And note that for certain reporting verbs like tell and ask, we need to include the indirect object, or the person that someone is telling to. So here we say she tells, and we can't say that she tells that she likes dogs. We say she tells who? She tells me that she likes dogs, right? And so that's a matter of also studying different reporting verbs and verbs that require an indirect object after to say who you're speaking to. And this is reported speech in the present is common for stative verbs. So hope, believe, to be, love, like, agree, to know, to think. These are all common verbs that we would stay in the present for reported speech. So here's some practice. So I want you to change the following example of direct speech into reported or indirect speech in the present simple. So what are you doing? And this is a female talking to a single person. So how would we put this into reported speech? So maybe pause your video for a second and think about this. And the answer is going to be, she asks me what I am doing, right? Reported speech in the past. So oftentimes, indirect speech reports on something that somebody said in the past, so we must change the verbs to the past tense. So sometimes we change the reporting verb into the past if what somebody said is not relevant or important anymore or true anymore, or what somebody said was sometime in the past, right? And usually this is the case for reported speech. For example, I like durian is what someone said in the past, and the reported speech would be, he said that he liked durian. This would be reported speech. So here we change the reporting verb and the main verb to the past tense. We also change the pronouns because the subject changes from I to he. Let's just go over a quick review of some tenses that we've learned. So we've learned the present continuous. So I am walking. We've also learned the past continuous, right? So it would be I was walking to the park. The present perfect we've learned is like I have done all my house chores. And we see the past perfect would be I had done all of my house chores. And we also recently learned the present perfect continuous. We know this would be I have been working at this company for this long. And the past perfect continuous, how would we form this in the past form of present perfect continuous? And we're going to go over this later in the lecture, but be thinking about this as we move on. So here's just some examples to show that when we start with direct speech, so if we start in the present simple, the present continuous, the present perfect, and the past simple, we end up with the reported speech, we change to these tenses. So we say, she always wears a coat. The reported speech would say, he said that she always wore a coat, which is the past simple, right? So the present simple becomes the past simple. Present continuous, I'm looking for my keys. She said that she was looking for her keys, right? So because reported speech is usually referring to actions that are in the past. Present perfect, she has written 3 letters for her friend. He said that she had written, so we changed the past perfect, 3 letters for her friend. Past simple, my friend gave me a bar of chocolate. He said that his friend had given him a bar of chocolate. See, the past perfect is used here as well if we start with the past simple. So here's just a review of what we just went over, and we also know there's some modal verbs too. So we learned modal verbs of obligation and advice earlier this year. We know must, have to, and should. And so whenever direct speech before we change to reported speech includes the verbs must, have to, and should, we change to the following verbs. So had to, and should for all of these. And we're going to look at examples here. Here's some practice of reported speech in the past. I'm going to change the following example of direct speech into reported or indirect speech. So what are you doing? So this is pretend this is a female and she's talking to a single person. So again, I want you to pause your video lecture and try to change this into indirect speech or reported speech. So the answer is going to be, she asked me what I was doing, right? And so asked, right, is whenever we ask a question, right? Asked me, for ask, we always have to include the indirect object, or who are we asking? She asked me what I was doing, right? So we changed from are you doing in the present continuous to was doing, the past continuous. Another practice, so please change this into reported speech. You must finish your assignment by Friday evening. Pretend this is like a female, a teacher who's talking to a group of students. So I want you to pause your video. And she told us that we had to finish our assignment by Friday evening, right? So here we see that must changes to had to, right, in the past. And one more. I should call my friends soon, right? So what would this be in indirect speech? So pause the video and take a moment to answer. And here we know the answer is going to be, he said that he should call his friend soon, and we know that should actually just does not change. It stays as should in the past when we change to indirect speech. Okay, so it's a bit easier. So past continuous, right? So if the tense we use in direct speech is in past continuous, progressive, what tense do you think we change to make reported speech? And in what situations would we talk about a past continuous action that happened in the past, right? So here, to turn direct speech into the past continuous tense into reported or indirect speech, we must turn the verb into the past perfect continuous tense. And so how do we form the present perfect continuous tense? And how do you think we might form this tense but in the past, right? So think about the present perfect continuous. So we know that, so with the past perfect continuous, it's pretty simple. We have the subject plus had been plus the present participle, right? So, and the negative form is going to be subject plus had not been plus the past participle. And the interrogative or question form would be had, the subject, been, and then present participle. So usages of the past perfect continuous are similar to those with the present perfect continuous, but they're for the past, right? So expression of an action that happened in the past before something else, but the action is longer, right? So some examples is John was all red and sweaty. He had been running. So we see that he had been running. This focuses on the action that led to a result in the past, right? So he had been running is something that he had been doing for a longer period of time, but in the past, and already completed. I could smell cigarettes, so I knew someone had been smoking. So had been smoking, that's something that happened in the past over a period of time, and that led to the result in the past, which was that they smelled cigarettes, right? So that's in the past, and the action that happened before that led to that result was someone had been smoking. So here this table might kind of help you better understand the difference between past perfect continuous tense and present perfect continuous tense. So we see that have been doing means there's the result or relevance in the present. So an action that kind of started in the past and that goes into the present or has relevance in the present, leads to a result in the present, whatever. Had been doing started sometime in the past and has result or relevance in the past still, okay? And so do you remember certain words that we use to connect events that happened in a specific order in the past, all in one sentence? So this might remind you. So we learned conjunctions of time, right? And so we see that we use the past perfect continuous with conjunctions of time, right? So we'd say, had the pilot been drinking before the plane crashed, right? So had the pilot been doing this continuous action in the past before this event happened in the past, right? After they had been searching for food for hours, they finally found a mango tree. So again, they were doing this action for a longer period of time in the past, and then that led to a result, but in the past. They found a mango tree. When I got to the temple, he had been waiting for me there for 30 minutes. So this person, when they get to the temple in the past, somebody had already been waiting over a period of time in the past. So here we see how conjunctions of time can be used with the past perfect continuous. We also can use the past perfect continuous with conjunctions of result, reason, and contrast. And so we'll look at these. So reason, because, right? We use because to show the reason for something. So because he had been drinking for a while, I decided to drive, right? Since the flowers had been blooming, it smelled lovely. So since has a similar meaning to because. Since or because the flowers had been blooming, it smelled lovely. So again, an action that was happening over a period of time in the past, and it led to a result in the past. It smelled lovely. Result, we use so. So I smelled the stir fry, so I knew that they had been cooking. In contrast, we have even though and although. So although it had been raining for many hours, the streets dried quickly and it looked like it had not rained. They were not expelled from the school, even though or although they had been breaking the rules from the beginning, right? So we see how the past perfect continuous can be used with several conjunctions of time and also result, reason, and contrast. And these conjunctions are important for you all to review as well. And now it comes to using the past perfect continuous and conjunctions in reported speech. So here's some examples of direct speech. So I was doing the dishes when my mom arrived. So here we would say, she said that she had been doing the dishes when her mom arrived, okay? She was crying a lot because her boyfriend broke up with her. She told me she had been crying a lot because her boyfriend had broken up with her, right? So again, she was doing this in the past, a continuous action, because of this that happened in the past. So they were watching TV before the fire started. She said they had been watching TV before the fire had started. Okay, so here we see in this last example, and also the second example, we see that we change the tenses. If there's more than two verbs in the sentence, we have to change both of those for the reported speech. So here we say the fire started. We change this to the one verb tense backwards in the past. So they were watching TV before the fire started. She said they had been watching TV. So we change one tense. And then we also change the fire started. The fire had started, right? She told me she had been crying, so that changes from was crying. And we change also from broke up to had broken up with her. So if there's more than two verbs in a sentence, we have to change both of those into the past one tense backwards. These are some final notes. So like I just said, when there's more than one verb in a sentence, both tenses need to be changed to the proper tense. And also, the first point is important. When changing from direct to indirect speech, the reporting verb remains in the past simple. So it does not take the tense of the other verb. So for example, in these, we see she said, she told, she said. Here, the reporting verb always is in the past because it's something that someone said in the past, right? And we only change the tenses of the action verbs. So whatever is the most important of what's going on in a sentence, okay? For your homework, now that you've learned how to form reported speech for several verb tenses and modal verbs, it's good to practice by changing actually in the other direction, so change from reported speech to direct speech. And so I will give you the answer key to these questions this week, but I want you all to practice a little bit and take these examples of reported speech and change those into direct speech, okay? Thank you so much for listening and paying attention. Please, as always, I hope you took good notes. Please write down any questions that you have and ask them at our Zoom session this week. And I look forward to seeing you this week. All right, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.